Coming up next on WKYU PBS, a special edition of Outlook. With this broadcast, we kick off a series of programs dedicated to the National Public Media Initiative, American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen, taking a look at the national dropout crisis. Today we kick off part one as we look at South Central Kentucky. Coming up next on this special edition Outlook, American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to this special edition Outlook. You know, WKYU PBS is pleased to be one of 60 public television stations in this country who are able to bring you this American Graduate Initiative. So we kick off today with three individuals who are basically in the trenches. We thought it would be important to start out with them telling their stories, what they're seeing. We welcome to the program Marcy Molwitz, who is a delinquency prevention service worker. Thanks for being here, Marcy. Matt Baston joins us. He's the director of alternate programs with Lighthouse. We'll tell you more about the Lighthouse Academy. And Shanna Banks joins us. She's with the Bowling Green Housing Authority. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have it in a minute. We'll show you a graphic with the anatomy of a dropout. But from your experience, if I were to say to you, give me the typical example of a dropout, could you do that?
Yes.
Pretty much?
I would say that a dropout tends to be somebody who may not get support at home, having problems in a regular school setting, things like that.
Same, Matt? That's what you see?
General overall problems are the same. And this is my fourth year of working with alternative students. I've just, in thinking about your program today, I was thinking that overall when I deal with students and I've counseled with them back and forth, it ultimately boils down to they don't see a goal or they don't have a goal. For it may be short term, it may be long term, but you'll ask them, well, what do you want to do when you graduate high school? And typically the answer is silence or no, I don't know. And I've seen that those kids typically, if we can't get them a goal or get them a reason to be working towards something, then those are typically some of the ones that end up dropping out.
Well, and I'd be curious too, and Shanna, you probably see this, it's their normal. Their parents don't put, or whomever it is that's their caretaker, and in many cases they don't have caretakers. I mean, I've heard stories, and we'll hear throughout this program, really sad stories. I mean, they don't even have a roof over their heads. But there's not someone there saying this is important or putting a premium on education.
What I've been seeing lately is those kids that you would have typically associated with dropouts is not so anymore. With the dynamics of the economics changing, loss of jobs with parents, situations is now causing students to drop out. Where we would have been able to traditionally track them, it's not so anymore. We are having people whose college parents are dropping out of school because of circumstances and not necessarily the tradition of what we've accustomed to seeing with high school dropouts.
That's important, and let's talk about that. But Josh, let's go ahead and roll that animation and take a look at some of those pointers, and Marcy touched on some of those. You know, it's an individual who maybe due to circumstances, maybe they have to go work.
Yes.
For their family, or maybe it is that they are having trouble at school. Maybe they're being bullied. Maybe they don't like a teacher. They're lost and they don't know where to turn. And so there are a number of reasons. We're going to roll those right now. And I think it's important to note that this is not set in concrete. You know, you can't typically say this is your stereotypical dropout because that's just not the case. But it's very important when someone gets to that place where they say, I'm done, I'm not going back. That has to be a really tough decision. And sadly, we had invited a young lady. She didn't make it tonight. We'll have her on a future show. She dropped out because she got pregnant. She just got her GED last night, but she must be celebrating. But the point is, you deal with these students. What do you see? I mean, when they're at that place where they say, I'm not going back.
Well, you have a lot of students. Every student learns differently. And sometimes they're just frustrated with the educational process. They're struggling in their classes and things like that. So you have to identify what is the root of the problem. Is it, like you said, bullying? Are they being bullied in school? Do we need to address that? Are they having problems at home that their focus is not on school, it's on their problems at home? Or they're just having problems in a regular school setting, and that's where Lighthouse is such a great program. And I refer a lot of kids there because it's a different setting, and and can get them out of school, especially if they're older maybe, get them out in a quicker amount of time, but still with a high school diploma.
Now, your delinquency prevention services, so help our audience understand how the state law reads, and you know, when there's a lot of talk about changing the age of eligibility to drop out of school, but as it stands right now.
At this point, a student can't drop out of school until they're 16, and only with a parental permission at 16. At 18, they can. So I know they're talking about raising the 18 all across the board, but now it's 16 and 18.
So a 16-year-old who gets his or her parent to say, sign on, basically it's done.
Yes.
And that's it?
That's it.
They're done. They're gone. They sign out and adios. It's been good seeing you.
We try to encourage that before they're allowed to sign out. They speak with the principal of the school and the guidance counselors, and we try to work with them to see what is going on and why they feel at 16 they need to drop out of school, and maybe try to put some other things in place to keep them there.
And as we go out through these series of programs, we have the school superintendents from the area going to be on in a couple segments. You're going to find out about all the amazing things in particular that are being done in the Bowling Green and Warren County area to keep kids in school. We're going to showcase some of those. In particular, Marcy, you referenced Matt's Lighthouse. Now, that's the Lighthouse Academy. That's what many people would reference as the alternative school. What does that mean?
Well, it's a school in Warren County that's designed for non-traditional students, and that being students who, for whatever reason, were not having success in the traditional school setting. I like to say that Lighthouse Academy is not alternative that some people think of as a school that's designed for kids who are have behavioral issues. A lot of my students are young parents. A lot of my students have dropped out in the past and have wanted to come back to school. Some of them have moved from different districts or states, and they have different requirements, so that would put them behind and not able to graduate high school in 4 years. But a lot of my students have failed several classes, maybe their first couple of years of high school. Therefore, they're behind, which puts them at risk for dropping out. And that's probably another reason I mentioned earlier, students not having a goal or something to work toward as being a reason for dropping out. But I think that's another reason I see is students may have a really bad freshman year, really bad sophomore year, and then they get in a hole. And they get behind.
Statistics indicate that it's
And
usually
so
in the sophomore year
we
that it's going
try
to
to,
drop out.
if they can get to the Lighthouse by their junior year, we can work with them and maybe try to help them see that there is hope. There is a way to get out, and say maybe get out in 4 years and graduate.
Did you notice the word he said, if? And that's the big if. It has to be identified because my sense is they're, in many cases, not going to ask for help. They don't know how to ask for help. They don't know who to go to, maybe. But so that if is huge.
That's the great thing about the counselors at their home schools in our district. We have a great relationship with the four high schools that come to Lighthouse. And the counselors, one of their goals is they look for those at-risk kids. Each of our high schools has an intervention teacher and a lot of what they do is data tracking. And so we're getting really good at tracking the data, which helps us pinpoint those exact students. So maybe at the end of the sophomore year, we can say, okay, here is John Doe. He is, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 7 for dropping out. And so maybe we need to get him to Lighthouse, or we need this intervention in place.
Well, let me ask, though. So you got John Doe. He's at the 7 of the scale. You go to him and you say, we want to help you. Is your experience, and all three of you pipe in on this, is your experience that they want help, that they're glad, like somebody finally heard me?
What we've done, and we're working really closely with both the city and the county schools, if we targeted middle and high school African American males, we established a mentoring program for the sole purpose of getting mentors into the school systems to be that interaction with them when they begin to see those issues, when they come to problems. They have someone to go to. So when they're encountering issues at home, they have someone they can come to. We're working really closely with community mentors as well as mentors in each and every middle school and high school. The teachers are helping out. The superintendents are helping out. So what we've done is try to put people in place to take a more proactive approach to when those problems that come up. How do we begin to address them? Sometimes it works in group settings. Sometimes it just works better. You know what, I want to just talk to you one-on-one. So establishing that reputation with this particular child now, I have someone I can go to. So really trying to take a more proactive approach because we know that kids are facing some really tough challenges right now. Who do they turn to?
Who do they turn to?
Exactly.
And somebody who cares. Somebody who cares. The delinquency issues, you know, you have to go in, you're responsible for that for the school system. And what do you see? I mean, I mentioned earlier that in some cases, these children, they don't have a normal as, you know, the majority would know it. In many cases, they live in hotels. They don't even have a roof over their heads in some cases. You see that?
I do, and part of my job, I do a lot with truancy, and part of that is going out and doing home visits at the houses and see how these students are living, and getting to know what really is going on, because you don't really know until you talk to them and sit down one-on-one, or maybe talk to their parents and see the problems that they're dealing with. And when they don't know maybe where their next meal is coming from or where they're going to stay the night, education's not at the top of their priority.
So we're just about out of time before we move into our next segment. Give us a sense of the situation. Getting worse, getting better, there's hope?
I think in Warren County, we have a lot of things in place to help identify, first of all, kids that are in danger of dropping out and give them alternatives to kind of keep them from doing that.
I sense that it's getting better. We've really identified recently, especially from the state, the pressures of needing to lower dropout rates, needing to increase graduation rates. Districts are really becoming attentive to finding the solutions and working toward areas and developing programs and researching the best methods and practices to help these students to where they stay in there and they do finish.
What I think has become a turn down is addressing children at a much younger age. They're beginning to talk to education as early as 5th and 6th grades with students now. And everyone now is beginning to form strong partnerships in forming teams that can be support systems for our students. I think Bowling Green and the Warren County area is very great as far as community partners coming together, and I believe beginning to address them at a much younger age, and partners coming together and forming support teams for our students is going to be proven to be very successful.
You hit the nail on the head. It takes a team.
Yes.
It takes a lot of people working. And as we continue to address this issue, the American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen, we're going to learn more about that team effort. Outlook's going to continue right after this. My thanks to all of you. Marcy, Matt, Shanna, thanks for being here. Stay tuned. More of Outlook after this. WKYU PBS teamed up with Brian Pretty's 7th grade media class at South Warren Middle School to shoot and interview teachers about education and the dropout crisis in Kentucky. And here's what they had to say.
Adversity can be an advantage. And so, you know, I take kids who sometimes come from rough situations and don't have the easiest of lives, and we find that as a positive. We turn it into a positive so that they can find that they can overcome anything.
Outlook continues. If you're just joining us, we're bringing you a special edition of Outlook, American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen. It's part of a national public media initiative to take a look at the dropout crisis in our nation. We're now joined by 3 administrators and a guidance counselor who really have the opportunity to see the bigger picture. So let's introduce our guests, and then we'll talk more about what's happening in some of our schools. Tim Murley joins us. He's the superintendent of the Warren County Schools. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Barbara.
In addition, Leah Krischer joins us. She is a guidance counselor at Bowling Green High School. Thank you, Leah. And Dale Brown joins us. Now, Dale has a rich history as a former superintendent, but now he's wearing a different hat. He's with WKU with the academic affairs, but you have a special title.
School relations.
School relations. So this is a great place for you to be. And
you.
Joe Tinius joins us. He is the superintendent of the Bowling Green City Schools. So I love this. Before we get started, I have to go back to something Leah said today. As a guidance counselor, we said, "What did you do today?" And she said, "I diagnosed normalcy." So, which speaks to what students come to you with issues. She thought she wasn't normal, and you were able to tell her, "Yes, you are." Talk about what you see as a guidance counselor as it relates to students and dropping out of school.
Students at every level, I believe, not just at the high school level where I serve right now, are under a tremendous amount of stress from so many different angles, whether it be home, finances, the economic issues that some of them face. Some of them are very much overachievers, and they're stressing all the time about their grades and their accomplishments and what other people think, what their peers think, and who's doing what. And the young lady today was, she felt like she's the only one that had a concern or these problems, and helped her understand that we're all out there and it takes all of us to support each other and And I was very happy she came to me and to let her peers know and others know that we're all out. There are so many educators out there for the students with all these issues that they think they're the only ones when every single child in our buildings have a huge issue and they're real.
And they're real.
They
and
are
that's
real.
what we addressed in the first segment when we were talking with some of the guests on that segment. It's the if and it's the somebody to pay attention and let them know that you care. Chime in here. What do we have going on in the schools? When we set out to look at this American Graduate Initiative, we started meeting. And we learned, we were all ready to talk about the dropout crisis in this area. And what we learned very quickly was, ooh, wait, hold on. Well, it's not as bad as the national average, and one student dropping out of school is too many. But what we learned was that, at least in the Bowling Green and Warren County areas, there are a number of initiatives underway to help kids. I mean, you really want those kids to stay in school. Talk about what the state mandates, and as administrators, what do you have to deal with as it relates to dropouts?
Of course, the state keeps up with dropouts, and as we do test scores, that's figure in your overall score, along with your test score as far as what your school or your district is rated by the state, and dropout does enter into that. But as far as dropout, everything we do is to try to keep students in school, and I think that's the essence of our being as an educator, is to see your student their potential and graduate from school. We do Leader in Me and positive behavior intervention. We have Lighthouse Academy. We do response to intervention. We try to find out who's at risk early on now, earlier than we ever have before, to try to get them involved, build a relationship, do something with them in order to get them to stay in school.
That's so huge. Dale, you're doing some research right now as it relates to some of this stuff. Help us understand.
Basically, we're currently going out and speaking with 8th grade students, 10th grade students, talking to them about maybe the habits we're going through right now in regard to study. What we're finding out is a large number of the students are not spending a large amount of time on their studies. Also, they have so many things that she mentioned pulling at them.
Distractions?
Distractions.
Okay.
That's a great term to use with this, but what we're trying to stress is the importance. You need to have a designated time to study. You need to have a certain amount of study time. And one study I shared with them from Duke University indicated that students need 10 minutes of study each night for each grade level.
10 minutes per night. That doesn't sound like a lot.
10 minutes per grade level. So with 8th grade,
yeah, okay.
we're getting up to a little higher number.
Okay.
And the students are not really excited about hearing that.
And
But
I'm
it
sure
is-
they just walk away and go, yeah, right, not going to happen. And I think that speaks to, you were talking about this young lady who felt a certain way. Social media and technology, of course, has changed a lot of that because we expect instant answers. Why should we have to study? So how do you break through that one, Joe?
Well, I think there are many more distractions than years ago when we were in school. So much centered around school. And I think, too, that a lot of our students maybe do not realize that in today's world, even a high school education, while still opens doors, does not open as many doors as several years ago. And certainly a student who does not complete high school will find very few doors open as it relates to employment.
And this would be a good opportunity, nice segue, because we've got some graphics looking at the earnings potential of a high school dropout versus someone who's graduated from college. And when you look at those numbers, it's very real. And in the course of their lifetime, a high school dropout will make $200,000. A college graduate will make about $800,000. Do the math. And so that's huge. So we're at the place where when someone comes to you, Leah, I understand someone decides they're going to drop out. They're done. You can't convince them that they're normal, as it were. They're coming to you and they're saying, I want to drop out. What's the procedure then? What do they have to go through to get out of school? Now they're age 16. Let's take it to a 16-year-old.
Well, if we have a 16-year-old, hopefully we have been working with that student on some issues. If we haven't, I definitely want to make sure that they know that their issues are real. They're coming to us, and we want to provide them opportunities. We want to tell them, here are the things that I think we should try, these interventions we should try before you sign these papers, before your parent comes in here and signs the papers, for you to drop out and tell them, here's what's going to happen. You know, if you drop out, then I'm going to definitely continue to help you. If you want me to help you, I'm going to help you. I'll get you set up with Bowling Green Tech and get your GED set up where you can start taking the courses and things like that to prepare for the GED. But before that, let's look at this. Here's what you have to do to complete. This is all you have left to do. But I can't do this, Ms. Krisher. I just, I've got to go to work, or I'm so sick of this. I can't stand this pressure, and I'm in trouble with truancy and things like this. And so we start knocking out some of those barriers and helping them know how to address, how can I get this barrier out of the way? How can I get this one out of the way?
I want to talk some more about that and the importance of goals and mentoring as some of those programs that you've initiated speak to. We're going to take a short break here on this special edition Outlook American Graduate. When we return, more. So stay with us.
WKYU PBS teamed up with Brian Pretty's 7th grade media class at South Warren Middle School to shoot and interview teachers about education and the dropout crisis in Kentucky. And here's what they had to say.
My philosophy is, once you're my kid, you're always my kid. And it's not much more difficult than that. If your kids know you're there for them, they will do what is necessary for them to succeed.
You're watching a special edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're addressing the public television initiative called American Graduate. Let's make it happen, as we kick off a series of programs designed to look at the dropout crisis in the nation. But what we're finding through these discussions, at least in South Central Kentucky, Bowling Green and Warren County, the issue is not as severe as the national level. But one child dropping out of school is way too many. We have superintendents here, we have an administrator from Western, and we have a guidance counselor in the trenches. Before the break, you brought up something, and I think this is important, Superintendent Tinius, that they drop out maybe at age 16, but they've checked out a long time before that. Speak to that a bit.
Well, I think that what we begin to see, unfortunately, as early as the intermediate grades, 4th and 5th grade, students who are beginning to lose interest in school. They're not able to understand the value of education at that point. And if we wait to try to address that when they get to the high school, it's too late. So that's where programs such as the mentoring programs that we have in all of our schools now come into play. The implementation of the Leader in Me initiative in all of our elementary schools factors into this as well, because it is a lot about goal setting. It's about thinking about your future and what you do to control your future. And that has to start at a young age. You can't wait until they're 16 or 17.
So mentoring is huge. And why is this? And this is one of those things where you go, well, yeah, that makes sense. And yet, people don't realize that by giving maybe 15 minutes of their time to a child could make all the difference in the world. Do you feel like your hands are tied sometimes as far as state laws and state regulations, or do you feel like you have the freedom to, I guess everyone's working toward the same goal? How would you answer that? He said, don't ask me to answer that.
I think we have some flexibility. I think that we have to look at what we think will best address the issue with certain children at certain times. And sometimes it's very much an academic plan of attack. Sometimes it's more of a social plan of attack. Sometimes it's more trying to get in and deal with family issues, or finding a way to structure a student's schedule so that they don't see dropping out as their only option. I think that there's the flexibility to do that. I think that we can say that it's all about the academics, but if all these other issues exist, the academics will not be a priority to that student, and if you don't address those other issues, you're going to lose them.
So basically you're talking about a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
Looking at the whole child and really a Gestalt sort of thing. What about the implementation of these family resource centers and some of those? So, somebody fill us in on that, because there were, up until, they haven't been in action that long, but they've made a difference. Tell us what they are.
1990. With CARA came the Family Resource Centers. And they have made a difference. They've done a tremendous job in providing a need for a lot of students who just did not have. They provide school resources close a lot of things, food, at certain times of the year, and have done a tremendous job in that. I'm really
a big fan of that.
family
But what I
service.
have to say is what we don't realize is that, and you experience this every day, these kids come to school, they haven't been fed, they don't have food at home, they don't have a roof over their heads. They don't have a parent, saying, wake up, you need to get to school, giving them a warm breakfast and waving at them as they get on the bus. That's not true. Give me a picture of what we're seeing really today.
If you can imagine it, whether it be someone without running water in their home, or a clean bed or even a bed to sleep in, or heat, it's out there. It's out there, and our Youth Services Center, Family Resource Center, they are wonderful resources for our families and for us to hook families up with and students up with. But the key, I think one of the greatest keys, is building those relationships with the kids, letting them know that you care.
And that it's okay.
Getting to know them, and that we are here to help you. We want to help you. If I don't know something, I many times call our Youth Service Center. What person or what organization in the community can I call for this? They'll step in. They help us out with that. I feel very comfortable calling any of the county schools, counselors, administrators, teachers, somebody that might know a resource. But if the kids know that we care and that we're there for them and that we do love them and we want them to be successful, a lot of times that's the door that they needed open for us to save them, to embrace them, to help
Keep
them
them in school.
graduate and work to their potential.
And then everybody wins. Go ahead, Dave.
And you asked earlier about the restrictions. Bowling Green and Warren County Schools both work with a why can't we attitude. And they go the extra mile. I've had the opportunity to work with both areas for a number of years, and we're really fortunate in this area to have two school districts working together to meet the needs of the students. And here at WKU, it's our initiative, if you will, that it's our desire to work with them to go out and meet with the students and allow them to receive information or give them information in regard to what they're going to need for the next level.
And just taking them to that next level.
Absolutely.
We're quickly running out of time. We have begun this dialogue. We have begun this discussion, and as we move into the new year, we will be discussing it even more. But leave us with some words of wisdom as we talk about this, what is dubbed national crisis, a dropout crisis, American graduate.
I preach all the time that we're losing problem solving and critical thinking, and I think I heard you ask what something about dropouts. What would you say about a dropout? And that's what I see. I think that we as educators and parents have hovered around our children and with social media and everything else, that they don't have to make a decision on their own. Whereas we did growing up, and I know I'm old, but we did, because I couldn't call or text my mom or dad instantly, or my friend. So I had to actually make a decision and live with that. And I think that we've made so many decisions for our children that they're having a hard time making them.
And we've only just begun this discussion. A special thanks to Tim Murley, Superintendent of the Warren County Schools, Leah Krischer, Dale Brown with WKU, and Bowling Green School Superintendent Joe Tinius. That's going to wrap it up for part one of this American Graduate special edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. Thanks for joining us.
This special edition Outlook, American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen, is made possible in part through a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and from your local public television station, WKYU PBS.